Love the art. Doesn't leave much more to the imagination. Recognizing the seas raging. Well, you might have heard of it, the perfect storm. October 1991, there was one of the strongest storms recorded in history. It hit off the coast of Gloucester, Massachusetts, called the perfect storm. It was called that because there were 3 storms combined, creating almost an apocalyptic situation in the Atlantic. Boats encountered waves of almost 100 feet, the equivalent of a 10-story building. And the meteorologist describes that as there was an old hurricane that was beginning to die in the Atlantic, and at the same time there were energy coming from the Great Lakes. And then there was a frontal system in New England. So 3 storms combined in the Atlantic. There was a film, maybe you've seen it, okay? Now if we take these images and translate them, now they were not 100-foot waves, but in our gospel lesson this morning, we read about the storm. Jesus' role is our teacher in the midst of storms. Now, the storm was rising in the crossing of the Sea of Galilee between the western Jewish side and the eastern Gentile side. We read, when evening had come, he said, "Let us go to the other side," the Gentile side. And leaving the boats behind, they took other boats with them. Now, in 1986, the hull of a fishing boat was excavated from the shore of Sea of Galilee, and the carbon dating showed it was about the same time of Jesus' historical time on Earth. The boat was 26.5 feet long, 7.5 feet wide, 4.5 feet tall. It would have held about 15 people, about 4 rowing. So it might be about the same type of boat that Jesus had used to cross the Sea of Galilee. And Jesus had taken shelter under the stern or in the back of the boat, where he would have had the smoothest sail. But in the midst of the storm, everyone else was terrified, and he was sleeping on a cushion in the back, chilling out. So imagine the storm raging, and tourists who have been taken on a boat ride of the Sea of Galilee have been caught in one of these squalls from time to time, and they will attest to the sense of terror that can arise when the winds on the very steep hills can create raging torrents of rain, mounting waves, blowing winds. Well, they were fishermen. They were very self-reliant men, and they would have routinely handled danger. But it comes to the point where physics takes over, where if a boat heads into a wave, higher than the boat is long, it'll get pitched, right? So you're doomed. Maybe the wave is higher than the boat. If it's higher than the boat is wide, it hits from the side, it will also capsize. And there he is in the midst of the storm. If the reliant fishermen are terrified, what would have happened? Well, they shout and they say, "How come you're not doing anything? We're about to die. Why are you still in the back of the boat? Why aren't you going to do something?" And I'm sure that they shouted some other things. "Wake up, help us. What are you doing? Get up." He finally wakes. Gentleness, and he says, "Peace, peace." He rebukes the wind, he rebukes the waves. "Peace, be still." And then they realize, who is this man? Who is this man who can change the meteorology? Who is this man? They still didn't know. They thought he was a teacher, but a miracle that would change the torrential winds, the torrential storms. Kind of like you might have listened to old-time radio, The Lone Ranger, where at the end of the boat ride they say, "Who was that masked man?" Well, they find out later he is the Son of God, but at that time they were still learning. Who is it that even the wind and the sea obey him? For us, perhaps you have been, or perhaps you are now, in a bit of a proverbial storm. We, like the disciples, sometimes move into panic. We see and sometimes we focus on the negative. I call it being on my gerbil wheel at night, going tick-a-tick-a-tick-a-tick-a-tick. But you don't go anywhere. You just go around and around and around and around, and it's really annoying until you take the gerbil wheel out of the bedroom so you can't hear it anymore. At least that's what my boys did. They would say, "We really want a gerbil." Okay. "We really want a hamster." Great. Well, now they can't sleep because the gerbil wheel's going. We all have our own gerbil, our own storms, our own seas. Maybe you've been taken off guard, blindsided by sudden changes. Maybe those fears, healthcare changes, something at work, our relationships, family, retirement, money. Those fears that we have that we don't know that we're afraid until all of a sudden they hit us. The anxiety. Something that you might be quietly worried about that you don't even feel comfortable sharing in joys and concerns. Whatever storm we might have. So I would invite you now to turn away from the picture of the storm, to close your eyes. To be in a boat, imagine you are in a boat with Jesus. He's in front of you. In fact, he's got the oars. You don't. Taking a couple deep breaths, imagining him, seeing his hair, his beard, his beautiful smile, those bright brown eyes. You can see the weathering from him walking around, teaching for so many years. What would you say? What would you say in that boat? What would you share? What tears might flow as you suddenly realize that you are not alone? Maybe you're not even able to look at him. Maybe you're too shy, too afraid to speak. What would you say? Would you speak everything on your heart? Maybe you would just sit quietly, knowing that he knows. Turning over our lives, our hearts, our minds, our bodies, over to the Son of God, that even the wind and the sea obey. Breathing in that peace, his still, quiet voice. Putting everything into the sea as he calms and restores you in body, mind, and spirit. And says to you, even the sea and the wind obey me. What is there to be afraid? Peace, be still. My peace I give to you. my peace, receive. And in opening your eyes and coming back to this time and space, inviting you to remember that whatever storm you might have, whatever might be rocking your boat, to come back to those images, to come back to the scripture, and to breathe in, to experience, letting the seasickness, letting the anxieties, letting all of that go, to be in the still, quiet, placid sea of Galilee. Whatever the weather, whatever your stories, we have the divine transforming power with us, within you, within all of us, calling upon that we might never be alone and never be afraid. Amen and amen.